Welcome to the Big Picture podcast here with Thiery Ringo. And today my guest is
Andrew Sault.
nice. Yeah. Today me and Andrew will be talking mainly about careers, but we'll, as I probably mentioned this to Andrew before, we just let the discussion go where it's going. Actually, I met Andrew at the careers fair. Andrew what was it? It was like I think it was a placement, like a placement overview. Like we were like advising new students in like second year about.
Yeah. If they had any questions or needed help with the applications,
Yes.
or kind of the right way to like point them in which direction.
Yes.
Yeah, so we just kind of were there for that. And
Yes.
we just got talking.
Have you done anything like that before?
No,
Oh,
not at all.
fair. Do you feel like your placements will put you in a position where you're seeking opportunities like that? Because, everyone has in a day we have a set amount of hours, 24 hours or something like that. And you could have done anything on that specific day, but you decide to come in to help out these students. Why did you do that? Why?
Well, I think partly, everyone, well, a lot of people anyway, they always kind of often feel the need to help. And maybe that's coming from a place of maybe internal pride, I would say. But anyway, I think it's important. Like, I absolutely recommend a placement to anyone. Even if, you end up hating the placement, at least it gives you an idea of what job you don't want to work in. So, yeah, I just thought to myself, I did a placement, had a pretty great time. I should want to motivate more people to do that. And then if I can help, then I can help. So yeah.
Great. Just to pick on the placement discussion, you did your placement in Germany, if I'm correct. Where in Germany was that?
It's near a little town called Einbeck, which is like practically bang in the center.
Yes.
So the nearest city is Hanover, and then it's about an hour or so from there.
Did you live in Hanover whilst you were on placement?
No, I was in Einbeck, so this
Einbeck.
tiny town. It's really lovely. It's like a medieval town, quite traditional. It's very important you learn German there.
Yeah,
As
I
I
can
was
imagine.
told by a doctor. He was like, "You're in old Germany, you speak German." I was like, "Right, okay." I'm glad I'm not dying, but yes. Yeah.
So did you pick up on some German whilst you were there?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'd actually planned to do a placement for a long time, funny enough, in Germany. So I'd taken these optional modules alongside my degree in German to like help boost me a bit. And then when you're there, though, you're just constantly hearing it all the time. And if you try, because that's the issue, because there were quite a few other internationals. KWS was the company I worked at, and they're very big. They have loads of international people from India, a few from Africa, other European countries. But the biggest issue is if you want to integrate with like the more of the local workers, like the technicians, you have to learn German, or you just end up kind of either perhaps being a bit more isolated, especially at some of the smaller stations where I was at. So it helped that I tried a lot. Yeah.
Okay. What? Just to, again, pick up on like the point of being isolated. You traveled like to Germany to do your placement. That's leaving I'm guessing your support network here in the UK. How did you manage that transition?
For me, I've been like, ever since I left college, I've traveled a lot. I went to Canada, spent 7 months out there, very good time. But for me, like, I like traveling and I absolutely love meeting new people. So for me, that wasn't too bad. Sometimes, especially I got sent to the north of Germany, and that was a bit more lonely because when it was in winter, there wasn't any like students like me there. So, that wasn't as good. But to be honest, like, the important thing is you try with German, and it kind of helps because then you're like I was kind of like forced to find people, which does help. Like I didn't have many friends. As in, like, I couldn't just, I didn't want to rely just on my friends back home and like call them every week or something. I just went out and found them.
I think I found something similar whilst on placement in that I was, in central London. I have family who live by London, but I didn't want to overly rely on them. I didn't want to start living somewhere and then just constantly be traveling up and down because you're looking for people and I feel like I kind of resonate with what you said about having to find new friends, find new connections whilst you're there, because you're there. You're there. I was there. I don't know how long your placement was.
Mine was 12 months.
So yeah, mine was 13. But you're there for a long time.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to find people. You can't just rely on your friends and your family. And so that kind of pushed me as well to like find new friends. And I think again, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come in to like just speak on the podcast is the fact that I have noticed that you're open to having discussions. You came for the Global Week presentation that we had, and I mean that was based off just one conversation. I was like, hey man, we're having this thing here at uni. You should definitely check it out. And bang, you were there. Some people would show interest, but they wouldn't act on that interest. And I feel like you're unique in that way, and that you act on that interest.
Yeah.
You feel like that helped you whilst you were on placement?
Yeah. I think it basically comes down to like what else are you going to do with your time? I mean, you could just sit doom scroll or something silly, or there's like lots of other things you can waste your time doing, but you might as well. Like we're at uni, like I push for like try and get as better grade as I can, because why else am I here? Yeah. And it's kind of the same, like I might as well experience something. I could have just stayed home and I don't really know what I've done, but so I thought that was very cool. It's a very cool thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it to me.
Yeah. And I think I have a similar kind of, I think in a similar kind of way, in that what else am I going to do with my time, and especially at this point, I feel like time is my biggest asset. You don't want to be wasting it,
No.
You need to. I try and like prioritize experiences. So something like just doing this podcast is another experience I'm trying to prioritize. What else? I do a lot of running. Those are just experiences I feel like I don't need them per se, but it would be nice to have something else apart from doom scrolling, of course. Which is we will talk about that on another episode. Doom scrolling should be, I feel like, a topic on its own. But yeah. So, okay, came back from Germany, settled in for your third year. How has the third year been like so far? If you were to give a broad-based review, what would you say?
I'd say it was easier than the second year, but actually coming back from placement, I struggled with some of the motivation, because you've been practically working, and you've kind of like you're doing a load of tasks or whatever, but then you come back and you have some assignment on something you don't really care about that much, and you're like, well, I'm here. But it was like, the grades didn't really drop at all, but it just felt everything dragged. Like I felt there was less work to do, even with my dissertation. There was less work than second year, but everything was just felt so much longer to complete. And then it ended up being in that final week before the deadline was due. That's when probably 60% of the work was being done, even though I'd started months ago, or not months, but weeks ago. So
I have to just point out though, Andrew is one of those people who's on it, and I feel like there are very few people who are on it, but he's just one of those people who I feel like he has his priorities, and he does his best to meet those priorities. Just to touch on that motivation, just for the listeners, you said you did the placement in Germany, but you did it in Bao. Was it Bao Engineering?
No. Well, sort of. It's to do. KWS is this massive seed breeding company.
Yes.
So like the crops you see in the field, like the wheat and the barley, for instance, that's all being like selectively bred to either mainly have the highest yield possible. And so this is what this company specializes in, bringing out these new varieties of crops. So most of my time there was involved being in the field, like planning trials. So you have all these different varieties of the crop, and you compare them against each other, and then you select the best one. So most of the time it was just in the field looking at all this, and then
And I feel like coming from that, your work has real meaningful impact. We need higher yielding crops. It's a basic human necessity. Coming from that and having to do a dissertation, which of course it's still very important, but like it doesn't have any real world in significance. Because I feel like I had a similar issue with my motivation coming in, and when I came into third year, I was like, I need to get the best grades possible. I just came out from displacement. There's a possibility that I might get a job back at the same place. So if I do my best, the job is assured. But when I came in, it started to drag as the year went through, because again, the work I was doing had a real world impact. My like projects, my courseworks, it's just going to end with my lecture, and that's it. It's of course important to build up the skills, but it's like a night and day difference. But yeah, over time I was like, I just need to get this done. and I sort of just locked in for the last month. Yeah, I think we met a couple of times in the library. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned going in to do a master's. Would that still be, again, correct me if I'm wrong? I keep saying bioengineering, but I know it's not specifically.
Yeah, because actually I thought about masters for a while, and I even applied for one. And then I decided, you know what? In the UK, this is one very good thing about the UK is that you can actually skip doing a master's and go straight to PhD.
Oh, wow.
So I did that.
You heard it here first, people. You can skip a master's and go straight to a PhD.
So it helped. Of course, I did placement.
Yes.
And for me, actually, there's quite a lot of opportunity in biology to do a PhD. Like if you've tried pretty hard at uni and that reflects in your grades, and that you've got extra experience in a placement, there's no need to do a master's. If you're set on doing a PhD, then go in straight because, like a lot of people I've spoken to, they're like, well, the first year of a PhD is basically a master's. It doesn't actually count really because you end up not really using much of the data. So yeah, I was lucky. So I started uni again in October time, and then all the PhDs started being advertised November, December, and January. And so I was just applying for loads, sending loads of applications. And yeah, luckily I managed to get one up in Nottingham.
Wow. Congratulations.
So
When does that start?
That starts in October. So I got a bit of a break.
Yeah.
Then back to it for another 4 years.
But will that be in? So is biology specific or?
It's more to do with agriculture, which is where I've always wanted to go. This is to do with cover cropping, and that's just a way. It's just a crop that is never harvested, but is there to like protect the soil. So I'm very interested in that personally. So yeah.
Just to touch on agriculture, my grandfather was actually a farmer, not a sharecropper, but he had like a plantation. And so I have, it still, that really resonates with me because I know how hard it is to get the crop, to get the farm from the position it is, say, at the start of the year to where you want it to be, and to get the kind of yields that you want at the end. It's crazy. It's impressive how much we've developed in terms of like technology since, say, when my grandfather started doing farming, to where we are now. Are there any major moves in agriculture that you think you might be interested in getting into?
As in for me, I'm very much into my organic farming. That's like literally resonates with my whole life. So yeah, for me, it's actually kind of a switch. Like we've got loads of technology now, but the way that I'm going to say like 70% of the farming is done, at least in the UK, and definitely in America too. It's not as soil conscious. So we kind of treat the soil as just, or it used to be treated. It's changing a lot now, but it used to be treated as just like, you throw in your seed, you throw in a load of fertilizer, and then you spray it with a load of chemicals, and then you get your crop. But that just ignores the soil completely, and that's literally living. So the big thing now that I believe is hopefully it's starting to change, and I want to be part of that, is like understanding and like with a whole like holistic approach to all of agriculture. So not just seeing like a pest issue as a single event, be like, well, why is this happening? What's missing in like the surrounding ecosystem too that's causing it? So in some regards, maybe what your grandfather was doing or the knowledge he had would may have even been slightly better than some of the practices we're doing today.
Sure.
But it's interesting. A lot needs to change in agriculture.
I feel like again, I'm from Cameroon in West Africa, but the perception is that we need high yielding crops. We need more fertilizer. Like you just mentioned that the soil it makes sense that the soil is a living thing.
Yes.
But it's not something that I would consciously be thinking of. I just regard it as, say for example, my laptop here. It's just an inanimate object, But it does make sense that it is a living thing because the nutrients, and everything that it's basically composed of. But yeah, in terms of just soil management, what are the major issues that you think that we're facing right now? Like what?
Mainly like depletion of organic matter in the soil. And basically what organic matter does, it's like basically just broken down leaves or something. Imagine that. And what that does is it can help bind to nutrients and also absorbs water. So it contains a lot of nutrients and water. But the issue is now we're kind of through like tillage practices, so like ploughing, so running like heavy machinery through the soil, it aerates it a lot more, and this can actually be burned off into the atmosphere, as in like the bacteria in the soil then can like oxidize it more also. And so like the kind of big issue is one, soil depletion, just erosion in general from the water. It's washing again the topsoil, because also part of the soil is clay that again has the same properties as it attracts like the nutrients to it. So yeah, it's really that, and also resistance from pests and diseases. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to solve at all.
No,
but
no.
And it's going to be a mixture of all approaches. But for my personal health and what I believe is the best way, is organic farming.
Just to touch on something which is just related to the podcast, is in, seeing the bigger picture when you say you plant a seed, because as you mentioned, it's you need to consider the entire ecosystem.
Yes.
It's not just planting, say, maize. You need to consider what will happen to, say, the animals that live in that area. How does that interact with the wider system? How do you feel like humanity in general how do you feel like we've, what's your take on how we've interacted with our wider living spaces? It's much harder in a city to see the impact, because it's just concrete. It's a concrete jungle basically.
Yeah.
But like we are still part of like the natural world, and so my question is, how do you feel like we can better integrate into the natural world? I know you've mentioned like organic farming. How do you feel like we can better integrate into the natural world whilst still keeping yields at a decent level?
Yeah, that's a pretty
I know it's a big question. This is I'm just asking for your point of view.
I think the real issue is we've got to get better at not being so wasteful, and also just being healthier as people. And there's a lot of disease issues now, like chronic disease. It's a really big thing. Again, I quote America on this a lot, because unfortunately that's almost like the epitome of it. But like I think if that was focused more, if people aren't as sick, you can almost like focus. You need less resources that gets diverted to healthcare, and so you can either because I guess the main thing is that I believe food should be expensive. It should be something that's valued, but also within the government, they can subsidize it for people who can't afford it. So good food is expensive in terms of the best farming practices. Will make it more expensive, but that in itself can make people healthier in the food and the ingredients in the food that they consume. So my kind of approach is make the people healthier by focusing on the food, getting a lot of manufacturers to clean up their act really, and trying to reverse this chronic disease is kind of my biggest take. But like my main, I guess, you kind of started it, kind of opened a can of worms on this one. But also, I guess, to diverge from that, is trying to maintain our ecosystems as they are. Like CO2 is a problem, but if we stop deforestation, it will take care of itself. When I was in Germany, they did a lot of testing on CO2 effect on like the yield and how it affects plants. So they increased it by almost like four or five times. And this was done in field conditions too, which is quite cool. But essentially all it does is the plant just grows bigger, which it would, and it actually has better drought tolerance. So the interesting thing is but the most important thing is we just stop damaging any of the ecosystems, and it will take care of itself. And to do that, we do need a rethink of quite a few things.
I feel like, it seems like techniques like that already exist, but it's a shame that they're not being implemented at a wider scale. And I don't know. Do you know why?
I think in terms of a lot of things kind of come down to money, I believe. Unfortunately, a lot of people make money along the way from many factors. I mean, So, I could probably digress really, really far down the rabbit hole. But no, I think a lot of it unfortunately goes down to money and people making money at the expense of many, many other people.
Yes,
So,
yes. I watched a video on YouTube, I think yesterday. It was about an anecdote about, how a village, a small village basically, and they have to sort of truck their water in every week or every month or so. And they discovered that they have an aquifer just below the village, but it's going to cost a lot today to sort of dig down and tap into that aquifer. But if they do it today, the cost is a lot. But if they do it today, they can provide water for the village for centuries, for generations, basically. And so the consideration is basically, do we spend a lot of money today and save future generations, or do we spend less money and just keep trucking water in? Bearing in mind that the more we truck water in, the roads get damaged. We need to keep maintaining those roads. We need to, keep on fueling the tanks and things like that. So it's about considering taking the heavy hit today and, having a better future, or you just continue what we're having. The anecdote was related more to using renewable energies. But yeah, just to touch on the health issue you mentioned, I tasted American bread, and it's like cake.
yes.
It's so sweet.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculously sweet. And as someone who's interested in agriculture, I wonder what your take is on big corn syrup, which is what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. Or some people call it big ag. It can go as many things, but again, this really links into it. Like, as I was kind of saying, like, because we don't treat as in like big ag, for instance, it's the one that produces a load of synthetic fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides, which do have their use. I do not disagree with that. And they're still needed and they will still be needed. But the point is, it's like every piece of land, every field, even every gram of soil is not identical to the next one. So it kind of needs to be treated in a different way. And, making a giant, huge field, and then plowing it maybe once or twice a year, spraying it with a load of fertilizers or putting a load of fertilizer on and spraying it, it just isn't the best way. As in, we've been able to do that up until now, but things unfortunately shift, and it's like a lot of ecosystems that we have used, like, again, to digress a bit more, cod fisheries, that was really overfished, and then, within a couple of years, the whole thing collapsed. And, it's not quite as dramatic in soil, but it's kind of similar.
And it could get dramatic.
It could get very dramatic, and then we're in a lot of issues. So, to go with that, it needs more regulation. I think that's the issue. In the UK, it's I think we have the ability to regulate it a bit better, but then you get in America. I do quote America a lot because
America will be quoted a lot on this podcast. Just giving you information here.
It's because they have really a lot of money and a lot of lobbying groups and everything. And then when you're like lobbying or putting donations to people's election campaigns and everything, then unfortunately you're going to get a few favors in return. So
it's quid pro quo.
Yeah. So I think you need a government that's not really influenced as much and by lobbying and
Okay, I'm gonna pivot back to careers and basically health. What you've just mentioned again. I feel like there's a lot of hope for the future because there are a lot of techniques that are up and coming. There are a lot of people like you that are like trying to implement change, but it's very grim. I don't know if you see this, but it seems like it's very grim. Like, lobbying groups will not stop today. They will keep existing. And perhaps they will keep pushing the same agenda. In terms of keeping your mental health stable throughout all of this, and we can go back to the example of your placement. What are the things that you do on like a regular basis to just?
I mean, actually, this kind of links slightly with your earlier anecdote of taking the heavy hit today. And I kind of, in general, that's kind of how I apply a lot of things. So, I work pretty hard now, and in the hope that there'll be a day when everything's kind of done, and then I can like absolutely relax and be satisfied with what I've achieved. And so for me, in terms of staying positive, like it's easy to be like, oh, there's a lot about climate change and everything. It sounds a bit doom and gloom, but the point is, it's gonna stay that if you do nothing. The point is, if you're hopeful and the people around you, you try and enact some sort of positive change, and you try and be hopeful, and you try and stay healthy. As I say, I think that's the most important thing. Like, you can look at that in 100 ways, but if you're healthier, it's just better for everything and everyone around you. So that's why I exercise. I try and go, 4 or 5 times a week. And then also eating healthy. That's probably the biggest thing I've started doing. Like, one, I realized I had to eat more, funny enough. And then 2, it's just eating very, very good, like quality things. So, all that combined kind of gives me more of a positive look.
That's good. I kind of realized this, maybe more so now. Sugar, especially having sugar like early on in the morning. I don't know if you've ever tested this, but if you have sugar early on in the morning, by afternoon you have like a heavy crash, and it's almost like your day should just be over. And for me, for example, my instinct would be to have more sugar, and then another crash would happen.
Yeah.
And that was just on that day. The cumulative effect is that throughout the next few days or the next week or so, I just have like a lower mood. And not to hate on sugar, I still will have sugar. I probably will have sugar sometime this evening. I'm gonna have like a chocolate bar or something like that. But it's about, I think, balancing it with it should be, I feel like, a 5% in terms of like your entire diet, just having like 5% or 10% of sugar. Andrew is keeping healthy. He's actually wearing barefoot shoes. I don't know if you're a barefoot shoe advocate, but I feel like you've sort of combined 2 things that would seem diametrically opposed. In that, okay, we have this big issue with agriculture, but it's perhaps an issue more to do with our health, and I feel like reframing it like that, I feel like it will influence people to sort of think about it in a different way. But yeah, how did you come about? Where did this sort of like, where did this idea come from? How is it just being in the industry for some time? How did you like sort of make the link between, okay, this is how the current agricultural techniques, and this is how, say, agriculture in general is currently not unhealthy, but it's sort of pivoting or pushing more towards like an unhealthy lifestyle for people in general. How did you realize this, and how did you make the connection? How did you make the link?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually come from a farming background, but I've worked. I knew I wanted to go into it, so probably from about 16, I've been working on like many farms all over the world, and like seeing some of the techniques, and I think it really was strengthened when I worked in breeding, and unfortunately most of the focus was on yield, and which is important, but you can only achieve that yield with like 2 or 3 chemical sprays, and that just adds up. It's not how we should farm. Unfortunately, having a bit of a weedy field is, in my opinion, not too bad. It doesn't need to be a clean, sterile field. Like anything outside shouldn't be like that. Even inside some regards. But no, so I guess for me, I saw all these things, and I saw kind of like how it's being done, and how diets are kind of changing, and then you kind of look on the packet of a lot of products these days, and it's like ridiculous.
You should check the packets of all the products you buy. It is actually ridiculous.
It is. So and I guess from first year at uni, I kind of changed a bit, but I started just cooking fresh. That's the first thing, maybe fresh with like cheaper ingredients, but still I knew what I was putting in my food. And then as time's progressed, I've like switched out even more things. And I guess even with the barefoot shoes, I've now switched to those. But it's kind of all linked. Like I think, again, I really like your anecdote. It's better that you like implement it now. And I could have gone another 3 or 4 years umming and ahhing about barefoot shoes, and I was like, well, you know what, I might just buy them. I might as well buy a load of better cookware. Again, that need a whole another podcast.
Yeah, we're talking about cookware in the next one. Getting Andrew in just to talk about cookware.
But no, I shelled out a lot of money from my placement on better cookware. On just even like switching to clothing and everything.
Mm.
Because I think you should. You know, if you want to be healthy, if you don't want to suffer, unfortunately, from chronic disease, which a lot of people now are going to start to, then you got to try and like implement the change today, really. And it's just being motivated to do that. And you know, you can't unfortunately change everyone. A lot of people, either they're lazy, they're stubborn, or unfortunately there's other barriers that stop them. But the point is, you know, at least if you can make a positive impact on yourself, then why not? You know, that's what gives me hope in everything.
It always starts from you, and then you can expand.
Yeah, exactly.
Expand elsewhere. I think this might have been Andrew Huberman who said this, but he sort of noted the same thing. You can't change everyone, but especially in terms of like these important lifestyle shifts, because it's important. There's a lot of chronic disease going around. Yes. It's shocking. It's shocking the amount of people that are like having cancer now. And you know, something like cancer, for example, it's very hard to pinpoint. But you know, last year I lost my uncle lost his wife, my aunt. She lost her to cancer. And it's one of those things. It happens so quickly, so quickly. And I think I read something about you can't prevent it because it's, you know, unpreventable. But if you sort of implement these lifestyle changes, you reduce your risk of getting it, you know. And you know, it's about taking the hit now, because if you do, it's expensive. Chemotherapy is expensive. I feel like, again, someone would see that and say, oh, why is he getting this expensive cookware? Why is he getting this organic food? It seems like it's a lot now. Yes. But, you know, healthcare is a lot more expensive down the line. So if you can keep your body, you know, healthy throughout, I feel like it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's even like, you know, you think if you're sick, or, you know, you're immobile or something, then you're going to have to constantly get cars, taxis everywhere. You won't be able to do stuff. You know, what if either you or your family or someone had children? You can't spend time with them.
No.
You're just always sick and infirm. So it's better. I just seen it. I might as well take the hit. I might as well try and do something positive and try and be better now. And then hopefully when I'm older, then I won't be troubled by anything.
Yeah. In terms of people in like your course or just your friends in general, do you feel like they share the same sentiment of like, oh yeah, we're taking this big picture view of what life is. We're just going to take the hit now, exercise more, eat healthier, so that down the line we don't have to, you know, face these chronic diseases or, you know, these other challenges that might come. Do you feel like in terms of your friend group or in terms of like the people you're associated with?
Yeah, like as in me and my brother, he's also very much into it. And we kind of like influence each other in that regard. I would say definitely some came from him and what he's either researched or looked into. And then a lot's come from me and being like, actually, Daniel, I think we should be doing this differently. And then, you know, that's kind of spread. It spread sort of to my parents a bit. They are a bit stuck in their ways, but they do take positive actions. And for instance, like going back to cookware, for like a Christmas present, I bought them like much better like non-toxic cookware, trying to switch to more glass and everything like that. And then also, you know, my immediate, my girlfriend, she's, you know, I've kind of helpfully changed her mind a bit, and, you know, she was eating pretty healthy and like living quite a healthy lifestyle, but there's still a few more changes that you can make. And then to a certain extent, some of my friends, again, unfortunately, either people, they don't seem to care, or, you know, I guess, you know, you can, like, you know, you're not going to be too badly affected for immediately for the next 5 or 10 years. But after 30 or 40, it will start. It starts to catch up with people.
It does.
So, you know, like we have the best time now to get in a better shape, put on muscle and everything, and then that will see you through so much better. Like when you get 40 or 50. So
I feel like again I share that similar sentiment in that. You know, I tried my best to sort of get as fit as possible as I can, you know, whilst I'm still in my 20s, just, you know, preempt. And it's not like I'm necessarily saying that in my 30s I will be unhealthy, but it's just a fact of life. My body will wear down as time goes on. But yeah, my brother also shares a similar sentiment with me. My sister as well. Fortunately, my mom is also stuck in her
Good.
ways. We have tried to get her on certain like weight loss diets. Um, it seems like you're very knowledgeable about like, and I don't know if this is because you've done a lot of research in agriculture, but it seems you're very knowledgeable about diets and about like healthier lifestyles. How have you been able to sort of tailor the information to your specific lifestyle? There's a lot of information out there. There's almost too much information out there. How have you been able to cut through the noise and just focus on what what you feel is important to you?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because most of the time, either people are trying to sell you something, or it's coming from a different place. Like a lot of some health foods aren't, in my opinion, very healthy. There's a lot of
Do you have an example?
well, as in there's a lot to do with these plant-based foods, and you know, I can generally understand an argument from an animal welfare point of view.
Yeah,
I can actually understand that. I've worked an awful lot with animals. They're lovely creatures, but at the same time, the best nutrition in terms of protein, in terms of other vitamins, is best from meat. It's absolutely best from meat. And the processing of animals, technically you and I could maybe even process a cow with a knife and a saw. To make one of these like fake meats or meat imitation, you need a whole industrial factory and loads of supply lines. And that doesn't go to being like a bean burger, homemade with kidney beans or black beans. I'm talking about the actual stuff that just doesn't look right. So no, I think that's a big issue. People are like, oh, eat less meat. And I just don't really agree with that. So again, that's again, my issue is that is kind of the whole thing is you have to see the whole picture. You have to tell the whole truth, even if it isn't particularly, even if it doesn't completely support your point.
I think I used to work as a support worker, and I spoke with a lady who she went vegan in like the 70s, and she said it was very healthy then.
Yes.
She said it would, because they were mostly eating plant-based foods, but there was less processed food at the time. But now she was just complaining she had to transition to becoming a vegetarian because there's all these Beyond Meats
Yes,
and meat substitutes, and they look and even taste like meat.
But yeah, like
That is not natural.
there's no what you have to do to it.
Yeah.
to get it,
It's that's the thing. What have you done? What have you
Yeah.
done to this burger to make it taste like meat? Because it's not meat.
It's not meat. So like if I generally have nothing against people if they want to do it healthily, but to say that this burger, this like Beyond Meat or like plant-based burger is better even for the environment than a normal burger, it's not, in my opinion. There's no way you can really justify it. But you have to again look at the whole thing. Like you can look at it and be like, well, technically the plant needs less water to grow, and therefore it requires less water than a cow. But you have to think, especially in the UK. I'm mainly talking about UK agriculture here. The cows are farmed and raised in areas with higher rainfall, higher natural rainfall. A lot of these plant-based things, yes, maybe they don't need as much water, but the point is you've had to irrigate, and so you've had to deplete the water resources around just to get this thing when you could have, just raised cattle in higher areas of rainfall.
I think I was reading on the almond farms in California and the amount of water that they take.
Yes.
This is, not that it's a desert, but this is a semi-arid region. People need that water. Like
They need that water.
it should not be going to almonds. But yeah, the amount of water that they're using whilst there was like a drought. I don't know what year this was in. It was a bit shocking that it had gotten to that point. But yeah, as you said, you need to take the bigger picture. You need to take a step back and sort of look at, take a wider view and see is this really providing the benefits that they claim it is?
Yeah.
And again, this is probably why I'll circle back to that question on how have you been able to funnel the information, because there's a lot coming in, and I feel like you sort of you're not like a nuanced viewpoint, but you sort of have this you sort of have this balanced viewpoint in that you're seeing both sides, But it's very easy to just pick a side and just again, this is what doom scrolling does to you. You just pick a side and you just commit to that entirely. How have you been able to keep your thinking balanced? Especially today.
Yeah, I think it's mainly because I just trace it back to like, what is their kind of goal? Like, what are they trying to do by telling you this information? And what are they trying to like support? Are they trying to sell you something? Or is it and so I guess I can't completely explain why I have more of a balanced view, but I think I like to see it like that, because there are people always make good points no matter the spectrum they're on. And I think it's just trying to think and choose the best. But like also question a lot of things. Like there's stuff I started doing for my health. My brother started doing. He went at one point like full carnivore diet, and I was like, I don't think that's quite right, Daniel. I don't think that's very good. And then eventually he was like 6 months later. He was like, yeah, it's just we can't do that. That's too far in one direction. So it's just and if you see something better, then kind of do change and adjust. The issue is you become so rigid that you can't change. But then the other way is you're too flexible that you never stick to anything. So it's just trying to strike. And if you are unfortunately going in the wrong direction, then you'll just have to try to amend and just take the hit and be like, well, that was silly. I should have done that. But so.
Yeah, because I had a similar thing to your brother. I went full keto at a point, and it's not bad, but I don't think I would live my life that way. No. Like you, especially in terms of like nutrition and diets, if you're working out consistently, you need a certain amount of carbs on like a daily basis. So just cutting carbs out, it's okay, like for your mental health, but your performance just goes down, and after some time you just feel really, really fatigued and really tired. Not that I feel like it works for certain people, but as with every diet, I don't think it's a lifetime plan. I don't think you should stick to one diet and be like, okay, this is the one, and I'll stay here till I die. I feel like you need to sort of adapt it to your own lifestyle. And as you said, you don't want to be too flexible, but you don't want to be too rigid, and you just want to strike that balance. But yeah. I kind of really, really resonate with that. Just to pick a bit on the carnivore diet lifestyle. I feel like extremes like that tend to get, that's what people will see on like the timeline. Not to review this podcast, but I'm trying to give like a nuanced view on a lot of things and try and give people like sort of a balance, provide people with a balanced discussion. But what sells, especially nowadays, are the extremes.
Yes.
The carnivore diets of the world. The Liver Kings. What do you think that is sustainable? What is your view on like the current attraction to the extremes? What do you think? Do you think it's just a fad, and eventually we will come back to like an equilibrium?
Yeah, I think the issue is, and I haven't explored this too much, but because there's a lot in the world that people can see as being very not bad. Again, I've referenced climate change a few times, but people can see that and think, oh, this is a really big thing. Extreme measures need to be taken, and in some things they do, but I think that may have led to people taking on these extreme diets. And as I was saying, yes, you do need to change things part of your diet, but taking on an absolute extreme thing, it's a lot of polarizing issues now, even in politics, and unfortunately, I think that just drives people to the extremes now because they're like, oh well, that's so against everything. I'm gonna pick the absolute opposite.
Just go the other way, yeah.
So I think it's because a lot of I'd say I think another big thing is media. Media is unfortunately too politicized now. It always has its own agenda, which it shouldn't, and I believe it always has. There's always been everyone's trying to push their own story or their own opinion, but I think now it becomes really, really heavily politicized, and again, that pushes more people to these extremes because they either want to rebel against it, against either what's happening or they perhaps perceive is happening, and then in other times, and so you get all these polarizing issues, and it just pushes people further apart, which is a real shame, actually. But
it is a real shame, and I feel. Again, one of the goals I want to achieve with this podcast is, you know, providing media that is not on either of the extremes. I would be lying if I said I didn't have any agenda whatsoever, because my worldview is my agenda by default. But you know, I don't want to be too polarizing, or I don't want to put myself on either of either extremes or either points of like either poles. But you know, for me, I feel it's about just providing people with nuanced discussion, open discussions, especially because, you know, what the media, again, you said this, what the media is pushing out that's not how people are in like day to day life.
No.
Like I have met a few Trump supporters, and this is just an example. But I've met a few Trump supporters here in Portsmouth, and I've had discussions with them. They're really nice people, you know. It's just, as I said, I think I had this discussion with you before we started the podcast. There is just an assumption because you're wearing barefoot shoes, you are a certain kind of person. Therefore, you know, I put you in that box. But the reality is that is just a part of your entire personality, and we've spoken about this, but you're perhaps a lot more. There's a lot more to you than just what you're putting on today. At this very moment, you know, people are inclined to change, and I feel like if you fit them or if you put them in that box, you're sort of restricting them or restricting their ability to change. You know, if I say, oh, okay, this person, I'm gonna use the Trump supporter again as an example. Like, oh yeah, she's a Trump supporter. I can't really have a discussion with this kind of person. You know, we don't see eye to eye. Not that I don't like Trump, but you know, if I sort of just put her in that box and pushed her to a side, we wouldn't have had the discussion that we did. And you know, I realized this is a very smart person. They have their reasons why they're supporting.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
everyone has a valid reason, as you said. Everyone, they're at either point of the spectrum. People have valid points, but again, we all have, you know, by default, our own unique worldview. I feel like that's what makes us unique. You have the way you see the world. I have the way we have shared experiences, of course. But we're both unique people in our own right. And I feel like it's about embracing our uniqueness, but at the same time recognizing that there are many things that we have in common. Like, for example, we are all human beings, and we need to get this diet issue under control. Like, which of big agriculture I don't know if big agriculture is listening to this. What is happening with all this corn syrup? Like, I don't know how it started, but there's a lot of corn syrup going around. I don't know if you've investigated, or if you've gone into the big corn syrup. I think I mentioned that.
Yeah, I've talked, I have, I have some knowledge of that.
Yeah.
You know, most of the soft drinks now, it's all derived from that, when it used to just be sugarcane. But unfortunately, it's just cost. It's like making a load of money at the expense of many other things.
Yeah, and as you said, it's about having that holistic view and realizing that, okay, it's a lot cheaper to produce corn syrup, but at the end of the day, people are getting sick because of this. You know, do we then, you know, increase the cost and produce sugarcane, and as a result, perhaps people stop getting as sick? Maybe. I feel like that would be ideal. But you know, the world isn't so ideal on like a day to day basis. Wow. I feel like this is a good point to end it. Do you have any other points you wanna?
No, not particularly. Other than it was great. It was great to talk.
This was a great discussion. I feel like I've learned a lot about, you know, agriculture and like the techniques, and you know, I've just learned a bit more about how your placement went and you know, how you were able to manage these things. And again, as I said, assumption, you were in barefoot shoes. I made an assumption, and clearly that assumption was false. You know, I didn't even have a specific thing to cling to that assumption, but you know, I think based on this discussion, I realized you're much more of a nuanced person than I thought. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. On the next podcast, we will be talking about Andrew's cookware. Yeah, and perhaps cooking methods. Is that
Yeah, that's also there.
yeah, cookware and cooking methods. But yeah, thank you. See you in the next one.